This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone. This is episode number 295 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm Gordon Brewer, and glad you're with me on this journey, and glad you are listening to the podcast. And if this is your first time discovering us, glad you're here. And if you're coming back for more, hope you'll take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. So I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest in this episode. He's no stranger to this podcast, and he's a person that I've really gotten to know much better over the last year or two, and that is the one and only Ernesto Segismundo. And Ernesto and I are have really kind of hit it off and become really good friends, in particular around these issues that we're going to talk about in this episode. Both Ernesto and I have been kind of thrust into the role of caregivers. I've shared on the podcast here in the past that my wife is disabled, and unfortunately, we've moved into that season where we've started hospice care for her, and there's a whole story around all of that. I'm not going to go into it now, but Ernesto is finding himself in the same place with his dad. So I invite you to listen in on our conversation just about how you handle these tough things in life and just handle our own mental health when it comes to dealing with these things that just put us sometimes in a really dark place. And so Ernesto gets really vulnerable. We really get kind of vulnerable with each other and just talking about this particular topic. And so grab your tissue box, but hopefully it won't bring you down too much, because I think overall one of the things that both Ernesto and I hold on to is a lot of hope just about the future. We also talk a little bit about our faith and how that has influenced us, and just being able to find support and meaning in our lives through that. So anyway, I think you're going to find it to be a very interesting conversation, and I'm really grateful to Ernesto for being so vulnerable and willing to talk about this topic. And so, so we'll get to that here in just a minute. Before we get to that, though, I would love for you to check out something, and that is the Practice Launch Club. Particularly if you're in those beginning stages of starting a private practice, the Practice Launch Club is a membership community I started a few years ago specifically for those people in those beginning stages. We meet twice a month for a mastermind or Zoom call that where we talk about the different things that people are working on. Also, with the membership comes a library of tutorials and little mini courses that you can go through just about the various aspects of starting a private practice, from the financial side to marketing, all the different things that we don't learn in graduate school. And the the big thing that the Practice Launch Club provides is community. And we, as I mentioned, we get together twice a month for a Zoom call, but also we interact in between meetings through our Circle platform. And it's a private platform where you can go on and ask questions and interact much like you would on a Facebook group. But it's not on Facebook for a reason. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much. But anyway, I invite you to go over and check it out. And also, from now until the end of September, if you will sign up and use the promo code PLC Fall 2023, you can get $20 off your monthly membership as long as you are a member. So be sure and check it out. And you can find that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. Again, that's practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. And there'll be links here in the show notes and the show summary so you can get to that easier. And also, real quickly, before we get to my conversation with Ernesto, be sure and listen to one of the members of the Psychcraft Network, which is a network that this podcast and several other great podcasts are part of, and also our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hey there, Daniel Fava here, and if you don't know me, I'm the host of the Private Practice Elevation podcast, where I share online marketing strategies and interviews to help private practice owners attract more clients and scale their businesses. The Private Practice Elevation podcast is part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts, and I'm super excited to be a part of this network alongside Gordon and the great work he's doing. If you haven't discovered the Private Practice Elevation podcast yet, you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd love for you to join me as we explore topics like building an effective website for your private practice, search engine optimization, content marketing, and copywriting, as well as my conversations with experienced private practice owners about scaling a practice, outsourcing, team leadership, and all things that will help you elevate your business and create the life you love. Be sure to check us out at privatepracticeelevation.com for resources and content to help you in your online marketing journey.
One of the keys to a successful private practice is having the right systems and processes in place to make things run as smoothly as possible. With a system like TherapyNotes, you'll have more time to spend with what matters most, your clients. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Your clinical records will be secure with less paperwork, which means you can give a much better quality of care. It's the EHR that Gordon uses in his practice. Be sure to check them out today by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes, and be sure to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so thrilled to have back with me my good friend, Ernesto Segismundo. Hey, Ernesto.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Yes. So Ernesto and I have really connected over this last year, just in different ways, and just part of it is parallel journeys in our life and all of that sort of thing. But Ernesto, as I start most of the podcast, why don't you tell folks just a little more about yourself, who you are, although I can't imagine that anybody listening to the podcast doesn't know about Ernesto at this point.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I create businesses. I have a group practice in California. We're also licensed here in the state of Nevada. And lately I have been, and I do retreats and summits as well too. So that's one of my passions. And former videographer. Many of you have maybe heard of filmit.com. I'm actually bringing back filmit.com.
Awesome.
In the next few months here, I noticed that video marketing and AI, artificial intelligence, is coming back. And so, there's a lot of great features out there for videographers and folks. So yeah, that's who I am in a nutshell.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're back with me on the podcast. And this will probably happen several times in the future, I'm sure. Well, we'll be swapping podcasts. I've been on Ernesto's new podcast. Tell folks a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called the Not Your Typical Psychotherapist podcast. It's basically a podcast for all of you who are not your typical psychotherapists, who I believe that are innovative, creative, and forward thinkers and risk takers, in this field. So that podcast is definitely dedicated to all of you.
Yes, yes. So, well, I know, Ernesto, our conversation we had talked about, I think, as I mentioned, we've got kind of some parallel journeys here. And I know one of the things for you here recently that you've been very vulnerable with and shared a good bit about is just having to care for your dad, who's kind of in that last season of life. And I know for me, same situation with my wife, but how are you coping?
That's a very challenging question to answer, right? Coping goes out the door with so many things, especially if you're an entrepreneur. And, for those of you notice, the tone on my social media posts has drastically changed. In fact, I'm kind of non-existent on that. And I had no idea how powerful the heaviness in my heart is. And, at the same time, when you're juggling businesses, it not only interferes, but also makes life, you question a lot of things, right? One of the things that I am experiencing is a level of loneliness and the lack of control. So just to back up, my dad, right now he's in hospice care, and there's levels of hospice care, right? There's folks who are just bedridden. They cannot exist. Their bodies are pretty much, they're just there waiting to die. Basically, that's what it is. But the type of hospice care that my dad is in is basically, he's alive and well. He moves around. Sometimes he doesn't. He's in deep dementia, and he has a type of dementia that is, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Benjamin Button, where he gets younger and younger and younger, right? But he has a mind of a very old individual. So my dad has, a mind of a toddler, but a body of an 89-year-old man. And so he tries to get up and moves around and thinks he can still do things. And it's a challenge not only for my family, but also for the nursing. So, I'm here in Vegas. They're there taking care of him. And, when you have that gap, not only in physical gap, but mentally, all the things that you're thinking about, is he okay? Is he going to get hurt? All of those things, even though that there are trustable nurses that would take care of him. But another layer to this is worrying about my sisters who are caregivers for him. And so, I'm here trying to work all of my businesses out, right? Just trying to sustain things, while at the same time, this thing is going on, across the seas.
Right. Yeah. I feel for you, Ernesto, because it's just uncanny how parallel are things. My wife is also in hospice care. And then also here more recently, my mom, who is 88, who lives 5 hours away from me. So I can't really drop everything and go. But like you, it's fallen on my brother and sister to kind of take care of my mom, who's had an infection in her elbow. They can't seem to get cleared up, and she's in the hospital now, and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah. And then juggling what we're doing in our businesses, trying to maintain a practice, maintain just the other entrepreneurial things that I know we're both involved in. It really changes your perspective. And I don't know what you're experiencing, but I think the hardest thing for me is giving myself permission to just slow down and just say, no to some things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the difficult part is the
Mm-hmm.
noticing,
Mm-hmm.
there are times when I just want to be away. And I gotta be honest with you. Anger, resentment,
Mm-hmm.
sadness, anxiety to a whole new level just really, really goes through me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a daily thing. Even when people say, how do you take care of yourself? Or here are some 5 self-care tips. Even that kind of does not resonate with me because,
Mm-hmm.
it sucks to be in this body
Mm-hmm.
um, because of all of the emotions. And, I understand how people get so taken over the edge that their reason, leaves them just because of
Mm-hmm.
all of these things going on, right? But what really keeps me sustained is my faith.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how difficult it is, I try to tap into that spirituality that I'm not alone. But even
Mm-hmm.
that kind of causes a lot of anger. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I bounce back and go, okay, you know what? If it's not for God, if it's not for anything, I there's got to be a reason for all of these things that I'm going through. So,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to one day tell a story that, oh my gosh, um, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make this
Mm-hmm.
happen. I'm going to make everything okay. And
Mm-hmm.
God's going to make it okay. So right now there's tons of challenges in front of me that it seems like the mountain is just piling and getting, but
Right.
at the same time, I have moments of clarity. Once I have those areas right there, moments of energy, clarity,
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to stay the course, then I go for it. I work out, I walk, I go on TikTok, I call a friend to talk. So that window of time. But there are times, Gordon, where the loneliness is just so overwhelming. You just want
Mm-hmm.
someone to give you just a glimmer of hope,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think also too, my mom passed away in 2014. This is activating a lot of things within my body as well too, and in my mind about how I wasn't there, that I was working a lot, just trying to make ends meet during that time, and it's almost as if it's a repeat pattern to this
Mm-hmm.
day, and it's
Yeah.
bringing up a lot of that. I mean, uh, uh, I used to be so free to just get on a plane and travel wherever I want to travel, right? But now I have to attend to my businesses to make sure that what's going on with the economy, what's going on with our business, we all have things in place that would sustain our business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is pretty much where I'm at this point and how I'm navigating through it. But what the one thing I do appreciate is these random beautiful text messages from our colleagues and friends and families
Mm-hmm.
just offering their prayer. I mean, I don't expect them to do much, but
Mm-hmm.
that in itself is enough. I mean, I had a handful of people offer some other things to me, not the time, maybe even finances, um, and that really, really helps out big time with the
Mm-hmm.
psyche, especially in my spirit.
Right, right. Yeah. One of the things you said that I thought about was being able to recognize those small moments of joy during a big period of just heaviness.
Hmm.
Being able to find those little bits that just kind of show up
That's
that,
right.
like you said, give that little glimmer of hope of recognizing this is just a season. That's something I have to remind myself of every single day, and it's kind of rinse, repeat. And like you, I draw a lot on my faith. It's nice having a community around you when you're going through these dark times. Um, and at the same time, it's like okay, I don't want to burden anybody with this, but it's nice to have them there. And
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think you hit it on the head right there, the nail on the head, that you don't want to be a burden to people. Eve, I'm honest about what's going through, with me, and I'm honest about those things now. I think it used to be, hey, I'm fine, just because I want to portray this. Ernesto's got it all under control, but man, this time of my life, it's I joke around. When people ask me, uh, how are you doing? It's like, well, it sucks to be me right now, and I wouldn't, I would not want to put this on anyone.
All
But at
right.
the same time, when I say that out loud, I look back at uh, um, people of faith, right? And how they've made it. I've been watching documentaries of people who've been at their lowest point, and I do believe that I'm at that lowest point, where they come back to become not only a testimony for other people, but a testimony to themselves as far as their resilience goes. So I like hanging on to that. I'm hanging on to dear life right now, and I'm sad. I'm allowing myself to be sad. I'm allowing myself to feel all the feels, because, when you have a father who's fragile and not being able to do that, or to be there with him through this time, and I wasn't there for my mom before, when she passed away. I was there when she passed away. She was already in a coma. But I didn't have a chance to say anything else. Right. So this is bringing up a lot. And I'm telling you that the energy level that I experience every day, it's just a different feeling. I have more empathy for people who struggle with depression, and anxiety. I have so much empathy for them, and I'm more attuned. I'm more aware, and when someone says, this is a lonely, lonely place to be, oh my gosh, I absolutely get
Sure.
it. I
Sure.
understand it.
Sure. Yeah. And that's it's the thing about grief, at least what I know and what I've learned over the years, um, is that, as I like to say, I'm going to put my old fart hat on, of just the life experiences, is that grief is not something you get over. It's something you move through.
Yeah.
And when you're moving through it, it's just, it's hell. And it's,
Yeah.
I can't, I don't know of any human emotion that's more intense than grief. I
Yeah.
mean, just, yeah. And so it's yeah.
It brings up a lot, when you're going through grief. And I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, I don't know if you know, I'm pretty sure you know her, Noreen Vanderhoeven. She and Debbie Frankel, Jenkins Frankel, they're both grief therapists with EMDR bents. They're very, very steep in the knowledge of this. And I told Noreen yesterday, I don't know how you do this. This is, I mean, if I can't even handle my own emotion, I can't even understand how you can handle everybody else. Well, it's and she went through this with her family as well too. But oh my goodness, it's a daily dose of, I'm going to trust God to get through this mountain. I've been I've been more in tune with my faith at this point, and making sure that I stay as centered as much as possible.
Yeah. So what are you learning about how to balance things during this period?
Nothing. I I
Yeah.
am allowing myself to be extremely unbalanced at this point, and it will come in, because even the idea of balancing is very exhausting for many folks who are grieving. Routine is a different thing. I try to get myself into a routine. So, the way that I look at it is through time, and not necessarily a balance perspective. It's time. It's wake up in the morning, do this, make sure I take care of myself. Maybe I do some devotions and prayer. So it's more about time. And if I'm feeling an intense, overwhelming anxiety or depression, I try to get out as much as I can just for a drive, just to give me some relief, but also give myself some moments of silence and feel all the feels. Because you and
Mm-hmm.
I know, counselors know that emotions come and go,
Mm-hmm.
right? The ebbs and flows of life. That's what it is. So all I have to do is just sit down, feel all the feels, and just hang on to dear life as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, my heart goes out to you because I know this is a tough period. I guess what the hope that I hang on to, and that then this kind of the thing that I echoes with when I'm talking with my clients is um, the fact that this is a season. Anxiety has a way of tricking us into thinking we can't handle things, but we do handle it. It might not be without discomfort or without pain or without sorrow, but we do handle it and we move through it. And but it sucks when you're moving through it.
yeah, yeah, it's excruciating to go through
Hmm.
it, right?
Yeah.
But it's part of life. Some people experience difficulty on a smaller scale, and to them it is real and overwhelming. Some of
Hmm.
us has that the Job effect,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
where everything feels like everything is just falling out of place under arrest, and it's like,
Hmm.
everything about you, your spirit, your body, everything, even the tone of my
Hmm.
voice, you know
Hmm.
it's not the same. But I just have to be really, really be mindful of, this is not only just a season, but this is a place where I could definitely flourish in the future. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the case. I think there'll be a great book and memoir to come out of this. And
mm,
yeah, maybe we can collaborate on that.
heck
So
yes. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
chapters and chapters of all this type of, I mean, I can't even imagine what you go through as well too,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I remember you talking about that a couple years ago or maybe last
Hmm.
year, and
Yeah,
you've been doing it for years before that,
yeah,
and
right.
that's some difficult
Yeah,
situations.
yeah. It's well, I say this not as advice giving, but I know I experienced my dad's death in 2019, and what you describe of what your dad is going through now is exactly what my dad was going through.
Wow.
He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and what you said earlier about being being a toddler in a man's body, and and not recognizing the fact that he can't get up, and
Right.
the caregivers trying to do their best to keep him settled and all of that sort of thing. So I understand very well what that's like. But I will say one of the holiest moments I can say in my life, or one of the most valuable times I can say, is having been with my dad when he did pass,
Mm,
and wouldn't trade that for anything.
beautiful.
But it's yeah, and so no, for some folks this might sound kind of morbid, but it's it puts us at a different level spiritually, emotionally, all of those kinds of things, to where the other bullshit in life doesn't really matter.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. You put things into perspective, when you're faced with such profound passing, of
hmm,
life and spirit. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Nothing else
yeah.
matters after that.
Right, right. Well, Ernesto, I appreciate your vulnerability,
Thank you.
especially during this season, and I'm so glad we've connected. I know we're going to be getting together for a retreat here soon,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, and so I know in the midst of this, you're still working on putting together retreats and summits, and so you want to
Mhm.
say what you've got coming up and things that might be of interest to people.
Yeah, yeah. So London is coming up in a few weeks, but next year I'm hosting at my homes the entrepreneur retreats. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to be hosting at my houses here in Vegas. And so just trying to get everything all prepared for that. If you are interested in doing your own retreats at my properties, absolutely, you are welcome to do that. So,
Yes. Well, that's good. That's great. And, I will say that the times that I have grown the most and just looking at my own career over the years has always been on a retreat. It's like you go and you get a totally new perspective by being around other people.
That's right.
And allowing yourself to be vulnerable and putting yourself out there. And retreats are a wonderful way to get very introspective, but also just learn from others and also allow that there's an element of caring that comes from retreats as well, where you receive from people just kind of validation and just,
There's a nurturing aspect of it. Yeah.
Yes. So absolutely. Well, tell folks how they can get in touch with you, Ernesto.
Yeah, well, you can get on Facebook. I'm there, and also on Instagram. It's not hard to find me. I'm also on cavacademy.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, my website, my newsletter, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's how to get a hold of me.
Right. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary. And I appreciate this conversation. I hopefully we didn't bring people down too much, but I think it's important stuff for people to hear.
Absolutely. We'll get through all of this. If you're struggling, we'll get through it.
Right. Well, take care, my friend. Well, a big thanks to Ernesto for joining me on the podcast and for being so vulnerable. I think as you picked up, Ernesto has been going through some really dark times for himself, and I'm so glad that we've connected and that we're supporting each other through some dark times and just some tough stuff in life. And I think that's one of the things that is so important for us to remember. We know this intellectually as therapists and counselors, but one of the things that can happen is we can get ourselves too isolated just in our own grief and our own struggles with life along the way. And I will say that if you are struggling with similar issues, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure Ernesto would love to hear from you as well. And we'll be glad to provide some support just around these issues, particularly if you're like a caregiver. I know that that's something that has really been helpful for me, is just to have conversations with other people that are in that caregiving role, whether it's for a spouse or a parent or a child or whoever. And it's we can't do it alone, and that's one of the things that I keep learning over and over again. So again, thanks to Ernesto, and be sure and check out his things. Be sure and check out his podcast. It's a great podcast. You're Not So Typical Therapist. He does such a great job with everything Ernesto does, and also be sure to check out his website. Again, there are links here in the show notes and the show summary, and find out about the summits and retreats that he is sponsoring. I'm looking forward to being with Ernesto here towards the end of September for a retreat that he's hosting, and looking forward to being part of that. And also be sure and check out the Practice Launch Club. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you're in those beginning stages of running a private practice or wanting to start a private practice, that's what the Practice Launch Club is for. It's a membership community. And if you are interested in that, go over to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. And when you sign up and enroll, be sure and use the promo code PLC Fall 2023. The promo code again is PLC Fall 2023. And we'll have that in the show notes along with the links. And again, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. As was mentioned, I use them in my practice and absolutely impressed with all the things that they're constantly improving and making better. And it makes the running of my practice practically seamless. I have to be careful about that, but it really does help us automate so many things and keep those records and track appointments and file insurance claims and all the things that needs to happen on the back end in running a practice. So be sure and check it out, practiceoftherapy.com/TherapyNotes, and be sure and use that promo code Gordon, just GORDON, to try them out for 2 months for free. So take care, folks. Looking forward to being with you in future episodes. I've got a lot of great guests lined up. I've got a packed schedule with the podcast here over the next several weeks and months. So take care, folks. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.